Welcome to In the Garden with Joyce Hochsprung. We're back here on this beautiful May spring day, finally. And we're going to talk about hostas and issues with hostas, dividing them, and also other shade plants. People always go, what else can I plant besides hostas? So we're going to talk about a few things. We'll start with one of my favorite hostas right down here in the front, Montana Ario Marginata. And it got a little bit nipped by frost because it's an early riser. But some of the other plants that you can grow in the shade, we've got Martagon Lilies coming up here and down here. Some of these are setting buds already, so it won't be too long before they're blooming. Variegated Solomon Seal. You do have to keep an eye on this one. It does spread, but this patch has been here almost 20 years, and finally last year I just whacked it back a bit. So it's not a real rampant, aggressive spreader, but it will spread. And let's see if I can find one. Oh, I guess the Fritillaria is about done blooming, but that's this tall grassy thing over here. You can see some spent blooms. There are white ones, and there is a one with kind of a purple and crosshatch marks on it, sometimes called guinea hen flower or checkered lily. But they're kind of fun. I just let them reseed and pop up where they like. Now, as you can see, I've got some hostas almost unfurled, and then we come down way down here to this little guy on stage, and that's one of the last ones to come up. That one you never have to worry about frost getting it. I never say never. But I love the shade garden, especially at this time of the year, because it's just, everything is so fresh and new. The slugs haven't gotten at things yet. And we're gonna kind of tuck over here a little bit. This is another fun plant. This one gets quite tall. It's the Lichtrum. Has delicate little flowers later. It's a little hard to find, unfortunately. You probably are gonna have to go online and do some searching if you want to try that one. But it's a really cool plant. Down here I have Vinca minor. Periwinkle, it's also sometimes called, is a nice spring bloomer. You do have to watch this one. I inherited this, and I found that as long as I pull up every spring anything that got out of bounds the year before, it stays pretty well put. But if you let it go, it can take over. Like I said, I like the color and the way it climbs on the rocks here and fills in, but I do every spring go through and yank mercilessly. So, because once they really get rooted, they're hard to dig out. But if you get them within the first year, not bad. Down here, we have some Virginia, or pig squeak, it's sometimes called. I haven't cut all the winter damaged leaves off yet. And I also haven't weeded very much yet. I just finished cleaning off beds last week. But that's a fun one. Some of them get really gorgeous fall color on the leaves. Occasionally some will bloom again in fall. Not always, you can't count on that. Coral bells, heuchera, are always fun, and a stilby. And I don't know about you, but coral bells, some are they're kind of hit and miss. Some do well, some not so well. And I'm not sure if it's where I have them or if it's the varieties, because I have some that do wonderfully. But I don't know what your experience is with them. Mine is mixed, and I will freely admit that. And we're gonna walk on over, if you're looking for a ground cover, over here, and I'm gonna turn my back on the camera a minute, we have wild ginger. This is a great little one. Doesn't take over, but it does move, and I see Lucky is trying to photobomb again here. Okay, and anybody that comes out, when these are in bloom, they always ask about this. This is Angelica gigas, and it's a biennial, so the first year it'll stay small, kind of like that. Second year, you can see it's much bigger and thicker, and it'll come up to about here or maybe here. It varies. on how vigorous the individual plant is, and it'll throw out these really cool dome-shaped, deep burgundy wine shaped blooms, and they look like they're birthing out of some alien or something, the way the leaves kind of split open and they pop out. But it's a really cool one. This one, you think you can't have color in the shade with hostas? You just need some hostas with different colors. This one is Dancing Queen, and when it's really unfurled completely, it's just got a very wavy appearance, and it does kind of look like it's dancing in the wind. So that's a fun one to brighten up the shade. Here is Seducer. That one gets quite large. I've got some others over on the other side. Usually the bad thing about the big ones is most of them tend to be a little bit slower growing, and they're also a little more work to divide if you want to divide them. Now, you really don't ever have to divide a hosta as long as you gave it the space it needed when you planted it. If you looked at its mature width and you just leave it alone, you're fine. Now, sometimes they'll die out in the center, and you can dig it and divide it then, or you can also do the cheater move, which I have been known to do, is to take a knife and just cut out that dead center, fill it in with shredded leaves and compost, and by the next year it's starting to grow back into the center again. And you didn't have to lift the hosta and disturb it, because you do set them back a little when you dig them up. One of my favorite early spring bloomers, and I think these just have the coolest leaf, is Bloodroot. Now this happens to be the double bloodroot, and they're done blooming, but when they come up, the buds are just wrapped up tight, and the leaves are kind of wrapped around it like a little blanket. And they'll come up and they'll sit through cold and wait for a nice day to unfurl and let the flowers out. So that's a really fun one. This is a dwarf Solomon seal. This one isn't blooming yet. It will be soon. It won't get much more than about this tall. And it's kind of a fun one for the front of the border. And we also have Lungwort, and there are a lot of different varieties. There's one right there, one right here. Colors and leaf patterns are similar. Some might have a little more silver, some be a little more spotty, some a little more streaked, but they're still fun ones. Okay, and they usually start out either blue and turn pink, or some start out pink and turn blue. And I have this very helpful cat following me today. One of my absolute favorites, along with Ario Marginata, Montana Ario Marginata, is this one called Liberty. It is, that yellow is just stunning. It is a slow grower, so don't look for this one at a lot of plant sales, because people have probably waited 10 or 12 years to get a good sized clump, and they're probably not going to divide it too readily. So you might have to, sport for this one at the nursery. This is Sagae, S-A-G-A-E. Another one, nice, a little faster growing than Liberty. Not a lot, but a little. And then over here we have, of course, the old Ostrich Ferns, which I have a love-hate relationship with. I leave them in this area because literally nothing else will grow around this old tree. And that and the Virginia waterleaf. I leave a little chunk around there because it's better than weeds. But I see one coming up here I'm going to have to whack out of here before it grows into the middle of Sagae, and I have to lift the whole thing to get it out. And we talked about, this is, now like I said, whether it's the spot it's in or the variety, but this is Cassandra, Heuchera, or Coral Bells, whichever you prefer to call it. And this one has done very well for me. Some kind of diminish little by little. This one has not. That's been a very happy one. In case anybody's looking, the Virginia waterleaf is just starting to set some blooms here. And it's so called because sometimes here's a leaf with the marking. It looks kind of like a water spot on the leaf. It's a native. It's so, a good pollinator plant. So like I said, I leave it here. If it comes out too far, it gets whacked back. But it hasn't, it's been here. It was here when I got here 28 years ago. And it really hasn't spread much more than this. Here's another one for a shade, and it'll tolerate a fair amount of sun, is Astrantia, or masterwort. It'll send up, and there are different varieties bloom at slightly different times. This one is a later blooming one. It's a very, very pale pink, almost white. Don't know the variety for sure. I'm guessing it may be the species. Because again, that was here when I moved in here. And we have a couple others. We have some Crested Iris down here. Tiny little things. Not a lot of blooms, but still it's bloom in the shade. So you take what you can get. And this one I believe is Echo Little Bluebird. I have a white one over on that side that's not blooming yet. This hardy geranium, this dark leaved one, I think this one is Dark Rider. And there is a newer one out. I don't know what the difference is, but it's got pretty, you know, nice. It hasn't been a real rampant grower. I've got a couple seedlings that have come up here and there, but this has been here probably 15 years, and you know, it doesn't bloom heavily because this one gets quite a bit of shade, but it does bloom, and I like the dark color against the other leaves. And then down here we have Lamy Astrum. Whoops, and I missed a... I love the silver on these leaves, and it'll get yellow flowers. Now you want to watch out. There are a couple varieties, the species which runs like crazy, and this variety called Herman's Pride, which forms a clump, and the clump will slowly expand, but it does not run. It's not an aggressive spreader. Ligularias. Okay, this one, it's kind of in a dry spot. I'm thinking I may just try to move it somewhere else if I can find a shady spot, because I'm losing shade. So sometimes, if you just look at different colors of hostas and some of the heucheras, and if you really want color all summer long besides that, you may have to add a few annuals, some begonias or impatiens or something like that, because most of your shade flowers bloom in the spring. There is an exception that I'll show you a little later, and we'll talk about that when we get to it, one that blooms in the fall. Okay, down here we have Emerald Rough Cut that's just starting to fill up. It's kind of named because of if you look at the leaf edges, it's kind of a fun one. And back here, another favorite is Striptease. It's just got this little white strip down the center of the leaf partway down. This one is just starting to open up. And of course, we can't forget the old-fashioned bleeding hearts. They're kind of a mainstay of every shade garden, I think. They took a little bit of a hit this year. Bloom isn't quite as heavy. They took a little hit with all the cold weather we had, I think. And of course, the Jack in the Pulpits. There's one just coming up here. They would like a nice drink of nice cool rain too, but we'll see. Here's another one just coming up, still furled. And you do have to kind of keep an eye on those too. Either cut off the seed heads when you get as many as you want, or just dig them out, because they will kind of pop up here and there. This is Pandora's Box, which apparently in some areas of the country does not do very well. For me, it's done very well. I've divided this one. I've got it in a couple places, and I've divided it, I don't know, half a dozen times, and it pops right back for me. We also have Mini Skirt down here, and Twist of Lime. Over there is Silver Threads and Golden Needles, is not unfurled yet, just coming up, and Limey Lisa. Sometimes you just got to get them for the name. It's just a fun name. If you like the minis, that's great. Just be aware that you might have to do a little more watering and pampering than you do on some of the mediums and large. They have a shallower, smaller root system, so they can't go as deep for water. So you want to keep that in mind and site them someplace where you can get at them to water them if you need to. without, dragging the hose 200 feet or something. But they are a fun little plants. They're cute little things. Okay, and we'll move on to another area and talk about a couple more heucheras that have done pretty well for me. Okay, down here we have this pretty purple, which has kind of a silvery overlay. Stainless steel. Sometimes it gets more grayish than purplish, but right now at this point you can see more purple underneath. And then kind of hiding behind this Angelica, we also have this one, and it hasn't gotten its tag yet because real tag, because I wanted to make sure it was going to survive, but I guess I need to make tags for a couple of these. They've proven themselves, so they get to stay. You see several of the ones in this bed are still just coming up. We'll try to do a quick revisit on this on another episode, just so you can see what they look like unfurled. This is a fun one, Rubies and Ruffles. Okay, here we have, that might be the same one down there, Pinot Gris, wine country here. That one is done quite well. Here we have Emerald Necklace down here, which one of the unfurls, you can see why it's named that. It's got a darker, and the outer edge will get darker as the season goes on. So it just kind of an emerald necklace on there. This is a fun little one, Rainbow's End. I really enjoy that one. Ice Age Trail struggles here. We're down to 2 pips, 2 things. So, like I said, it's almost like I can't pour enough water on this with the Tamarix trees, but if they go, my shade goes. So it's a toss up here. Summit Up gets quite large. It will have a little bit of variegation will come on the edge as it matures, the leaves mature during the season. Apparently a tag got lost here, but that's a fun one too. But you do have, here's some variegation showing up a little bit. It doesn't come out right away. It comes on as the leaf matures. Oh Cindy, this is a neat one, another big leaved one. The leaf substance isn't as good. It's not as thick as, say, Jewel of the Nile, but the good side to Oh Cindy is that it does not try to revert to an all green, where Jewel of the Nile will sometimes revert. You have to try to dig out that offending eye so it doesn't take over. So if you notice that on your hostas, where it's suddenly you've got leaves coming up that are not the color they're supposed to be, it might be because it reverted back to its original parent, one of the parents. And if you don't want it to take over the clump, you'll need to dig that out and separate it out. Cracker Crumbs is another fun little small one. It's got nice tight clumps up nicely. And this is looking a little rocky yet here. Probably didn't do a real good job of cleaning out the old stuff on it, but it'll be buried soon enough. This is, I think it's Beetlemania sedge. Just kind of moves around in there. It's a fun one. Dance With Me is another one, and you can see there, I believe that is, not August Moon. My memory's getting shot, people, sorry. But a nice variegated one. Some of these open up a lot faster than others. This is Shimmy Shake. It'll get a little lighter as it goes, and that's another one kind of like Dancing Queen, where it's the way the leaves move in the wind, I'm sure is what gave it the name. Couple of these are unknown, were here when I got here, and I'm not quite sure what they are, but over here we have, here's a fun one. We'll move down to this. This is another stainless steel heuchera. That one has, like I said, done well for me. I can't promise it'll do well for you. This is Mukdenia, and And the blooms are just coming up here. They're not up where you can see them yet, but we'll kind of pull that down. So it does bloom. I think I need to divide this one and move it around a little bit. And it gets nice fall color. So it'll give you a little shot of kind of reddish tones in the fall. Here and here we have sun power. This one's fighting with a tree root. This one is not. So sometimes if they're in decline, you know, look at what's growing around it. What has happened? Is it more shade, less shade? Or are the tree roots just moving in? And I found there's just a nice big fat tree root coming right towards the center of that clump. So if I can wrestle it free, I may just move it over next to this one and put something else there. Okay. We have a couple of primroses down here. I just put these in 2 or 3 years ago, so the clump is very slowly expanding. These are double ones. I think, oh goody, I have the tag yet. Pink ice, and I think the yellowish one is something cream. Here's another Virginia, and you can see that this one, the leaves really took a hit this winter, but it's still blooming, and this one has a little bit bigger flowers. That's its claim to fame. And as I said, it's spring fling. The leaves will fill back in, and within a month the leaves will look much better, the flowers will be gone. And like I said, Astilbe, I think this one is Mighty Pip, or one of these is. And one thing with the Astilbe, in the botanical name, there's different kinds. If it says chinensis in the botanical name, they're usually a little more tolerant of dry conditions. As far as Astilbe go, there's no Astilbe that likes it dry, but they'll tolerate it a little better than some of the, like Orensii or some of the others. Down here we have another Solomon seal. This one's called Byakko, and you can't really, this one's a little later. In fact, every year I think this one is dead because it doesn't show up until way later. But there'll be a lot more white on the leaves, and it'll progress as the season goes on. It gets more and more white on it. A lot of things start out white or lighter and get darker. This one goes the opposite, which is also probably why it hasn't spread as much, because the more white you have on a leaf, the less photosynthesis, so the less vigorous it is. Okay, this is another goat spirit. I told you this is kind of a medium-sized one. I'm pretty sure it's Misty Lace, but this one won't get, you can see it's already forming the bloom heads here. The buds are there, so it won't get too much taller than this, maybe about here. And they just make a nice statement clump. And as you can see, I lost this tree. That was just taken out about 3 weeks ago. So we are having a lot more sun here, so we're going to see what happens. I hope to get another tree in here this fall, at least maybe yet this spring. We have Turtlehead or Kiloni, and this is a late blooming, a fall blooming perennial, and this will take quite a lot of shade. This variety is Hot Lips, a little bit darker pink maybe than the species, but not a lot. So it does do some spreading. Now it's kind of funny because before we built the shed 5 years ago, it was in a different bed, and in 10 years it never spread. I mean, it just made this tight little clump, and I was, come on, grow a little, and I put it in here, and it kind of, yeah, I got to whack it back every year a little bit. It's not too bad right now, so we'll probably leave it for this year, but that one does spread for me now. It didn't before. Remember I said this one blooms late in the season, in the fall. There's 2 or 3 dark varieties anyway of Actea. They used to call it Simicifuga, and the powers that be decided it belongs in the genus Actea, so there we have it. It's now Actea, but you have this nice contrast. Some of the newer stuff is lighter green. Older growth gets a little darker, and then it'll get up to about here, and it'll send up pink spires late summer, early fall. This is Bowman's root, or Galenia trifolia, I think. This has real dainty little white flowers on it a little bit later in the spring. Just a fun little bloomer. Not a real showy one, but just fun. I just put this in this spring, so obviously it's not throwing very much shade yet. Oh, and something I forgot to mention is Brunnera. This one is Jack Frost. I have Alexander's Great over there, but it's got the blue flowers in the spring and just kind of a fun one. Some Japanese painted ferns. I'm quite fond of these. I have a few different varieties. Haven't necessarily tagged these, so I couldn't tell you which variety this is, but I love the leaves on these, the color, the purple on the stem or on the veining, and just the kind of silvery green. Up here is another one, and down here is one called a lady fern called Lady in Red because of the red stems. They haven't fully unfurled yet, they're still coming up. And here's Phlox Divaricata, woodland phlox, which is kind of a fun little one. I don't know how that's going to do with this much sun. We may have to find a new spot, but we'll see. This goat's beard up here is my really happy one. This one will get, it's the same as the one in the front bed, but this one will easily get to this height. And it's just incredible when it's in bloom. Columbine, which will grow well in shade, but will also tolerate a lot of sun. A couple different varieties here. I don't really plant it. It just pops up here and there, whatever crosses, came up. This one is in full sun and is quite happy. I don't plant it because I have a lot of trouble with Columbine sawfly, and I hate picking the little things, and I don't like spraying if I absolutely don't have to, so I just, if they kill it, they kill it, and if another one comes up someplace, fine. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Okay, back here we have another goat's beard, different variety, and this is cushion spurge, Euphorbia polychroma. That's kind of a fun one. Once it's done blooming, it can look a little lanky, kind of flops over. So I just take shears and cut it down to about 4 or 5 inches. And then it comes back with nice, fresh, mounded foliage for the rest of the summer. So that's, but some people, just like poinsettia sap or some of the others, some people are sensitive to it. So if you are, you probably want to wear gloves when you're doing that so you don't get the sap on your hands. It's kind of that milky, latexy type of sap. I'm going to tiptoe through here. And here we have some Japanese ferns that are a little more opened up and easier to see. Another mini hosta. This one is Cherish. That's another one that has done quite well for me, and Pandora's Box again over here. And then over here is, oh, I have to think. Or I have to find the tag, one of the two. Here we go, Chartreuse Wiggles. You just can't help but love a name like Chartreuse Wiggles. A couple more heuchera. This one, I believe, is Miracle. Oh, Marvelous Marble, sorry. And I think this one is Frosted Violet, and this one I think I could actually divide. That's how well that one is done. And there's another one down there. And then we have Peach Melba, which also does quite well. And I think that about wraps up my plants for shade. This is shaded in the morning, sun in the afternoon. So thanks for joining us. I hope you found some interesting information. See you next time in the garden.